Is one Buccaneer standing out as the obvious choice for the world-famous FFPC playoff challenge? What are the tips you need to know to cash that $500,000 check in this year's competition? And who is the right chief to insert onto your roster in the most anticipated postseason contest? Plus the $500,000 grand prize champions of the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship, Donny Andrews and Brady David, join us to talk about how they put together and managed such a juggernaut, along with some tips on who to target and fade in the FFPC Playoff Challenge this year. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Quiet Hollers. Remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com. Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, the one, the only, the incomparable Farrell Elliott. And Farrell, I got to find out. We had week 17 this past week. How did it end up for you this season, my friend, as far as all the leagues that you competed in?
Hey, there's enough victories in there to keep me coming back, Balky. I've got some plus margins and some surprising outcomes. The one team that Jeff Joaquin, KFFSC Royal Family, was managing had a rough run in this last week and fell from 11th, I think, down to 48th overall, but that's good enough for a full team, and Jeff will be back taking another swing at it next year when all of us that listen to this show and wish to play will load up in a variety of different leagues. But I tell you what, Balky, I want to keep that seat warm, and I want to get to it as soon as possible, because that $1 million payday, when you start flirting with that top 10 and realize that the boys have moved to pay out to $1 million, it's pretty exciting stuff.
To be a millionaire FFPC edition coming to you in 2022. Before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, we got a couple of contests I want to tell you about in a second. Also coming up on tonight's show, we're going to get you starting to get you formulating those FFPC playoff challenge lineups. We're going to tell you how players like Devontae Adams, Josh Allen, Travis Kelce, and others should figure into your decisions. And the $500,000 grand prize champions of the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship, Donny Andrews and Brady David, are going to drop by in about 10 minutes or so to talk about how they drafted, managed their team all the way to the mountaintop. Their only entry in the Football Guys Players Championship, and it was Donny's second ever Football Guys team. And he wins the $500,000, which is tremendous. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to shout out to the chat room right now. You can post any questions you might have for us in there. If you want to do the Twitter thing, you can do so. We are at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. If you want to connect with Donny, he's at DAndrews66. And, of course, Brady is on Twitter. Brady David is at BDavid16. Of course, check out Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship contest I love playing in every year at KFFSC.com. If you want to post on our Facebook page, do so at Facebook.com/HSFFhour. And you can always give us a call at 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us or for Donny or for Brady. Send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and, of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. By the way, Bryce going to be attending his beloved Lions, taking on my beloved Packers in the Motor City this week. So hopefully Bryce comes back with a big fat L from his Lions, and the Packers go in with their first ever 14-3 record. That remains to be seen. What else remains to be seen is the 2021-2022 world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge filling up. That's going to happen. Remember, you only have a little over a week before those rosters lock. $500,000 grand prize in that 12-player lineup, including 4 flexes. It's a $1.3 million prize pool, $200 to enter, and it's a set it and forget it. You don't have to worry about salary caps. You don't have to worry about drafts. You just pick your players, double points in the Super Bowl for anybody who makes it there, or the Pro Football Championship, and then you can win $500,000. And if you want to, if you're interested in doing that, but you don't want to pony up the $200, don't worry about it. We got the Football Guys Playoff Challenge back for the third year, $100,000 grand prize in that, and that's only $35 to enter. All the details at myffpc.com. Also, check it out. Scott Kobe, the rotoviz.com high stakes lowdown on the show this week, rotoviz.com/podcast. Scott, of course, a former main event league champ. He also was the runner-up in the super bracket this year in FFPC. We talk about that. We talk about a lot of playoff challenge stuff in that episode, rotoviz.com/podcast. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. All right, James Conner was limited in yesterday's practice, and it sounds like Chase Edmonds is not going to be playing in Week 18 for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this means that James Conner not only be playing for the first time since Week 15, he will also handle the lion's share of the touches in the Arizona backfield against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Farrell, as we look towards this, and obviously we'll get our final piece of information in Week 18, but who's the Cardinal that you're looking at in the playoff challenge if you're going to submit a lineup or two? I mean, is it Kyler Murray, or would you roll the dice on somebody like James Conner or Chase Edmonds or, Christian Kirk even to be contrarian? When you look at the Cardinals team, how do you think their representation should be for you in the playoff challenge?
Oh, I'm real good at picking those contrarians, Balky. I pick contrary. They're contrary to scoring is essentially the teams that I've picked in. But actually, I had a team a couple years ago, and one that I did play with good friend Robbie Fetcher from the KFFSC. We did pretty well. A wise man once told me that you want to get into that Super Bowl with a quarterback. And so I'm going to stick with your Packers, Aaron Rodgers, and that home field advantage. But I've got to look at the numbers, which is not my strong suit. But your question was about the Cardinals. And, yeah, James Conner would be my guy. Here's a guy that on 5 occasions this season, 5 separate games, rushed for 2 touchdowns. There were 4 other games he scored a rushing touchdown. That's 14 touchdowns. You say, well, he's not the number one receiver out of the backfield. Well, you know what? He can catch it. 2 more scores that way, 33 catches. I really like this player, and I can't wait to draft him next year. Hopefully he'll be back with this team. I think he makes this team a lot stronger. And, yes, I'm glad he's coming back this week as we get ready for the playoffs.
You look at James Conner too. Like, he broke down so much in Pittsburgh, Farrell, and I wonder if that's because there wasn't that compliment, that Chase Edmonds compliment there.
Yeah.
He has that this year, and his body. I mean, yes, he did miss time, but I feel like with the amount of fantasy volume he put up this year, you could look at it from like the standpoint of maybe it's actually better that he wasn't the bell cow this year and that he split time because it made him more worthy of being started in fantasy lineups in the FFPC and KFFSC.
And that's what's so interesting about the playoff challenge is that the players that the cream rises to the top, and those are the players that the team will go to. Those are the players they'll run the offense through those players because that's how they feel that they will advance and move on to the next round.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be moving on to the playoffs, but they will be doing it without Antonio Brown. In fact, Ian Rappaport said earlier this morning, I believe, that Tampa actually asked Antonio Brown to seek some mental help before his release from the Buccaneers. Brown thought it was ridiculous, and then he just wanted to be released. Now, going into the game against the Jets last week, Antonio Brown and his agent asked Tampa to guarantee roughly $1 million in incentives that Antonio Brown was trying to get in the final stretch of the season. Tampa apparently denied that request. Brown, according to Bruce Arians, was not happy with the number of targets he had seen in the first half before he obviously made his very infamous exit from the Meadowlands in that game. Now, there's the Antonio Brown story. There's the Bruce Arians Tampa Bay Buccaneers story. All that aside, as we look to the playoff challenge, Farrell, you look at this, Leonard Fournette was dinged up. Chris Godwin is out. No more Antonio Brown. Is Mike Evans the slam dunk Buccaneer to use in the playoff challenge, or does Tom Brady still have a lot to say about that?
Yeah, well, Brady will have a lot to say about it, but he'll have to say it through Evans. What we just said about Connor goes certainly doubly for Evans. His situation that this player, when the team plays difficult matchups, Evans must be the guy to respond. And, he had a tough game early against the Cowboys to start the season. But against other top opponents, he's done very, very well. Most recently against Buffalo, 6 out of 6 catches, 100 yards. When they played the Rams in Week 3, he was fantastic. So Evans is my guy in this offense, especially with the diluted receiver pool. And the young guys have contributed. And without Godwin there, they're going to continue to contribute. But Tom Brady knows where to go. And, it'll be Gronk and it'll be Evans. And fortunately for Tom Brady, he still has those two tremendous targets for him.
Gronk is going to be another guy to consider too when you have the tight end premium scoring. The fact that this dude was, basically a top 5 tight end this year. I think that's very important to understand that this, 4 flexes. You can use several tight ends in this format too. And Gronk might not be the worst guy in the world as we move forward here to get those playoff challenges rosters locked for you before 4:30 next Saturday afternoon. Joseph Person, who is covering the Carolina Panthers for The Athletic, said that the Panthers are actually going to be listening to offers for Christian McCaffrey this offseason. Now, out of the last 33 games that Carolina's played, Christian McCaffrey's actually missed almost 24 of them, and he's got $44 million left on his contract that runs through the 2025 season. Last 2 seasons, anybody who invested in him with the top pick or top 3 picks, it's been unfortunate, and he's been a bust. Now, 2019 was fantastic. Over 400 touches, 2,392 total yards, and 19 touchdowns. He has not played since Week 12 this year when he went on injured reserve back at the end of November. I got to believe that he's going to be the bell cow again next year, Farrell. But the million-dollar question is, as the FFPC kicks off drafting later in January, KFFSC won't be far behind, if not at the same time. Where does Christian McCaffrey go? Is he still a first-round pick? Is he a mid-first-round pick, or does he fall all the way to the end of the first round or later? How do you view where you think high-stakes drafters are going to be putting this guy in drafts, and then where would you take him?
I think I think that determines by how legitimate Carolina is in listening to some offers for him, and then how McCaffrey would potentially rework that contract where it not make such a cap hit for an acquiring team. Because this gets my head spinning, Balky. We're looking at a player here that really needs a change of scenery, and we're looking at a team here that doesn't have the complementary pieces to go around him. I start thinking about, goodness, what could this player do in Atlanta? Atlanta, well, their salary cap is in a hell of a mess. They're paying 70% of their money to 5 players. One of them is Julio Jones, but they do have a new general manager, and I like him. The guy's name's Terry Fontenot, and he knows how to move money around. And he has young players playing, especially on the defense, and they're playing better at the end of the year than they were playing early. So you think about a new start for McCaffrey in Atlanta, and then you can daydream about, hey, where's McCaffrey from? You know what? 49ers, they've got to figure out a way to win that division. They've got to figure out a way to compete with the Rams. McCaffrey's certainly a way to do it. The top-paid running back there is Mostert. Mostert's making $3 million, and you put the other three guys together, they don't make $3 million. And they've got a good salary cap group there led by a guy named Jeff Diamond. And Diamond knows how to extend those contracts. So that would be a good thing. And then the last thing I would daydream about, New England Patriots. Who's got the most money on their salary cap? They're $69 million on their salary cap because they don't ever have dead money, because they don't ever pay the rookies that they draft into a second contract. It's been a long, long time since they've extended a draft pick into a second contract, and that gives them money to spend. And, they'll be glad to give Carolina a lot of draft picks for McCaffrey, so they don't want him anyway. So you take McCaffrey out of Carolina and you ask this question to fantasy players, and they'll quickly forget soft tissue injuries and say, you know what, a change of location, a new training staff, and lesser opportunities, but more production within those opportunities might be just the perfect thing for McCaffrey. And he'll shoot back up the board.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, too. I think that, rightly or wrongly, if he is in a different situation next year, we will look at him differently than if he is coming back to Carolina for the 2022 campaign. Hey, we got the $500,000 grand prize champions of the 2021 FPC, Donny Andrews and Brady David, coming up in just 1 second. The last question I want to get to is actually from the chat room right now. The official HSFFO or Ivy League professor, Hudson Kern-Reeve, has a question about Derrick Henry. He wants to know, Farrell, is Henry a stud for the playoff challenge this year? We know he's coming back in Week 18. We know Tennessee is in the playoffs. We also, to me, outside of A.J. Brown, who I personally would not trust in the playoff challenge, outside of A.J. Brown, what other competition is there when you're talking about getting King Henry and the volume that he should get, especially the way playoff football usually goes? Your opinion, is he a stud for the playoff challenge?
Well, I don't know why this question is being deferred to me. If anybody knows a stud, it takes one to know one. Hudson Kern-Reeve is a stud of upstate New York. It's Cornell and all. But listen, of course, and Henry, if they're going to bring him back, it has to be with a bit of caution, but I don't think that the player would be put on the field if he's not ready to play. And if he's ready to play, all of it's going to run through him, just like it did at the end of the year in previous years. And we've seen less from the quarterback position, less production from the wide receivers. They just had some opponents down the stretch that they've been able to beat. It's been some miracle football. This is the least likely number one seed that I ever could have imagined. But with Henry, it becomes a team that you can imagine them doing great things. And they'll do it through him, and, he's the guy you need. I'd hate to sit there and realize that I didn't win the event because I played another Titan and not Henry.
Right.
That would be unforgivable.
Yeah, great point for sure. And I think we'll get into some more insight into how you should be building those lineups, not only with what you and I have to say, but also what our guests have to say about it tonight as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to welcome in both of them in right now. High school friends from the Baltimore area. Was Donny's second ever FFPC or any other high-stakes team this past year. The only other one they co-managed together back in 2019 came up just short of the championship round. This year, slightly different story. Their only entry got them to be the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship $500,000 grand prize winners, foiling Abib Egbatova's quest for a three-peat for the $500,000 grand prize. Please welcome onto the program the latest $500,000 FFPC winners, Donny Andrews and Brady David. Gentlemen, first of all, congratulations. And Donny, let me ask you this right away. Has it sunk in yet that you and Brady are going to be carving up $500,000?
No, it hasn't sunk in at all yet. This week has been a complete whirlwind. It's really hard. It's hard to believe. It's the longest week ever and yet the shortest week ever. So I don't know about Brady, but at least for me, it has not sunk in yet.
And Brady, I want to get your thoughts on this shortly. Before we do that, can you tell our listeners what you're doing for a living when you're not crushing $500,000 in the FPC? Donny, I'll let you go first here, and then Brady, please let us know afterwards.
Yeah, so I am actually a software engineer in the Baltimore area. So going on about 7 or 8 years now.
And I am a senior media buyer at a advertising agency located in Maryland, which is a clean way of saying that we pollute your TV with ads that you likely do not care about or want to see.
Wow, I'm glad that the guys are there aren't going to hear that. We'll have to. Oh, Balky, it's live, isn't it? We can't. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
well, fellas, congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And you might as well quit now. I mean, both of you are young, you're handsome fellas. You got 4 first names. I mean, you guys can go out here and do whatever you want. And is it because you knew you were going to win, or is it because you're naturally frugal, maybe had better things to do, couldn't carve out enough time to play a second team, and then you just come in and walk through this thing? And how did this partnership form? Because in all seriousness, I think this is really fantastic. I have always played some partners, guys that are near and dear to me as great friends, and it really bonds the friendship. And well, you think about, well, do I want to win it alone or do I want to win it with a partner? It's even sweeter winning it with somebody that you can work hard to it. So how did this come about?
Yeah, so like you mentioned up top, Brady and I have been friends since high school, going on about 10, 12 years now since we graduated. So we've been playing in like little tiny small stakes home league for just as long, since high school, with some friends of ours. So we've always bonded over fantasy football. And just a couple of years ago, I think 2019 was the first year we started. I had actually never heard of the format. Brady had started with some college friends of his to start playing, and we were texting back and forth, just talking about fantasy football. And he brought up the idea of this FFPC league, and if we wanted to split one, and it sounded cool to me, so I was definitely in. I think to answer your question about whether or not we knew we were going to win, or if it was more frugal, I think at least for me, it was definitely on the frugal side. It was just something to try out and not blow a whole bunch of money. But yeah, so once we got done our first year, we found out that we're pretty like-minded. We sort of have the same. We're on the same page on pretty much every single decision we make, with maybe the extra 5% that there's little arguments about. But with that said, after the first year, it was a really easy decision to run it back the following year.
And
Brady,
by like-minded, Donny essentially means that we're notorious for drafting 4 to 5 rookies every league we're in. So we ended up doing that this year in this, and it actually ended up paying off for once with a high upside hit. But that's kind of what we're both known for.
So Brady, and I want to take a look back and like really analyze this team from birth to championship here. A huge key to the success was you guys having the number one. You had the 107 pick in this league, and you chose to skip over Derrick Henry, chose to skip over Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones. There's a lot of other guys that people were drafting around that spot. You ended up going with not only none of those guys, but you went with a different position altogether and getting Devontae Adams. The thought process that you and Donny had behind that, why did you decide to skip over running back and then take Adams there? Obviously the right decision.
Well, a little tidbit on that is it's kind of funny is I went back and looked at our text messages because I never delete them, and we had actually, before we had found our order, we had complained that we were probably going to get like the 7th pick, so it's definitely not something that we wanted. But given the format of FFPC with full point PPR, 2 receivers, 2 flex, and 1.5 for tight ends, it basically, we had either Devontae or Tyreek in our mind before the draft started, and there were 3 running backs, McCaffrey, Cook, and Kamara, we could consider just because of their pass catching upside. And I think we were also maybe hoping Kelsey would fall to us, but that didn't happen. But we weren't very big on Zeke. We weren't big, or I don't know about I wasn't big on Henry, which was absolutely the incorrect decision. It just ended up working out because he got hurt because of his pass catching upside. Eckler had too many injury concerns, and Aaron Jones, we were worried about A.J. Dillon. So we kind of decided that given our setup and where we were picking, that the best route would be to draft one of the premier pass catchers. And then on the turn, we were hoping for a workhorse type running back, which we ended up getting in Najee.
That's an excellent group of running guys. So pardon me, guys, because I'm looking here. People don't necessarily think of it this way, but Baltimore is just a very, very quick flight from Louisville, where we're having our KFFSC live big game weekend on the 12th and 13th of February draft and viewing party for the game. It's going to be a great party, and we've got luminaries like Gerzak, Corson, and Balkman coming in from Wisconsin, and I hit the trifecta today because I got to talk to all three of those guys. So that was really a great thing. But so the frugality that you've already admitted to here, and the fact software and advertising, I think, come Monday morning, you guys can walk in and just leave those careers behind. You can just shut the door on them because you're already fantasy football pros. We would like to have you. Look, according to Southwest Airlines, you can get here nonstop for $59 each, and we got a lot of great fantasy players over here. We're going to have a draft. We got Kentucky girls. You guys are single?
I am. Yeah, Brady's not.
Yeah, well, okay.
No.
Well, you know what, we got girls that are just dying to meet you, and Brady can approve of them. But anyway,
that's right.
And they're going to love you. They're going to love you over here. So what?
I'm happy to play wingman for Donny, though.
There you go. There you go. Well, I got to tell you, you guys walking around with $500,000 wallets. I'm not so sure. You might have your own swagger. You may not need wingman at all. I mean, you might be your own, you may. But anyway, let's get back on point to fantasy football because all this was going through my mind because in our leagues here in Kentucky, you must start 3 wide receivers. And I am so thrilled about the fact that you guys came in, and according to my report here, selecting only 1 running back through the first 7 rounds. I love having options at wide receiver. Even more than that, I love having options at tight end. But I just never am ballsy enough 1 running back. Who was your running back? When did you go to the next running back? And were you scattered every week to try to figure out who to play a running back since you really didn't value any of them in the draft?
So we went into it with taking Adams, and then we were hoping for basically 1 of 3 running backs to fall to us, and that was Jonathan Taylor, whose ADP was slipping for, quite frankly, no reason. Najee, who's going to get 95% of the running back touches in Pittsburgh, and then we were on Antonio Gibson. So our plan was to probably get one of them, and we thought there was a very high probability we would. And once we did, we decided to go best player available for, the next few rounds or as long as it took us as we had our, as I think they were calling it, hero RB. We didn't end up taking another running back until the 8th round, which was the pride of Zach Moss, who was a healthy week 1 scratch. But we ended up, we ended up having Pollard and then Damian, and, we ended up drafting a bunch of guys that there was a route for them to end up being league winners. And if, the guy ahead of them got hurt, and none really came to fruition really, but we ended up running pretty hot, I would say, with our RB2, and ended up we had Mark Ingram and Jeff Wilson and guys that would go down, and these other guys would step up and actually fill in for us and just, get us 8 to 10 points of all we would need each week.
Talking with the $500,000. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric. No, go ahead, Eric.
No, I just wanted to remind everybody we're talking with the $500,000 Football Guys Players Championship grand prize winners, Donny Andrews and Brady David, here tonight on the show. They're talking about the process of going through the first 7 rounds, only getting one running back. Go ahead, and I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'll get into the next question here.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just to add on to what Brady said, you kind of have to go in with the mindset of if you're going to do that, if you're only going to take one running back in the first 7, 8 rounds, you have to live with being uncomfortable at the running back 2 position after your draft. I think if you're looking at your team after the draft is done and you're solid at every position, the way that we had our draft strategy, you're kind of doing it wrong. We were trying to basically take as many shots as we can at the receiver position between rounds 3 and 7 or 8, just so we can fill those people into our flex spots and kind of maximize our upside in a big tournament like this.
Donny, we know. Go ahead, Brady.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that and some of the receivers we were taking, we obviously wanted high upside guys, and we ended up taking, before we took our second round, we took Jamar Chase, who the fantasy football community all thought he forgot how to catch a football, and we also ended up getting Debo, who everybody was all concerned about, the emergence of Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, and he was kind of the forgotten man there, and everyone kind of forgot how good he was the year before he got hurt.
Donny, from the photo that we have on not only in the show website, but we saw it on Twitter today from the HSFF Hour and myself and the FFPC, we know you love Mark Andrews. So when you look at when he was available, when the pick came up for you at the 406, was that just absolute must-have? We can't let this guy slip. We got to grab him here, or was there some discussion about maybe not taking Andrews there?
No, honestly, I think we had one slam dunk pick of the whole draft, and it was Andrews. It was pretty much a run to the podium and get him sort of pick. We were actually considering him in the third. We were also considering Kyle Pitts, which actually we almost took, but we decided that we were going to take Terry McLaurin instead. But I think going into the draft, we decided that we really wanted one of the top 6 tight ends. Especially in this format, you have 0.5 PPR for a tight end, so it's extremely valuable to get one of those guys, and you have such a huge positional advantage over these guys that don't have one of those and aren't putting up tight end numbers like a receiver. So once we passed over Pitts, we were just praying that one of the remaining 3 tight ends would slip to us, and I think Pitts went the pick after. Hawkinson a couple picks after that, and we had to sweat out probably 4 or 5 picks for Andrews. But as soon as he fell to us, we couldn't click the button fast enough.
Oh, that's a golden situation to get that tight end. We talked a little bit about him last week. Personally, I just couldn't stay with it. I had him on so many teams, I thought it would be prudent to get others, and that was the wrong thought. I saw Andrew's stats so far this year. 99 catches and 9 touchdowns in one more game. It's just fantastic.
It's crazy. And we're probably the biggest Ravens fans here, and we would have never expected that, especially at the time of the draft. You're looking at the Ravens are a run-heavy team. You still have Dobbins and Edwards who haven't gotten hurt yet, so they were kind of forced. Their hand was forced a little bit by throwing the ball. So we maybe lucked into it a little bit, but there's no doubt that he's a freaking awesome player.
And Balky asked me a question last week, and I'm going to give it to you guys because I had a couple people call my hand on it because I had Andrews going ahead of Kittle next year, not Kelsey and not Waller, but going ahead of Kittle. Do you guys feel the same way?
I'll say that, being Ravens fans and the fact that he just helped bring home $500,000 for us, I honestly wouldn't even. I would say he might be the tight end 1 next year, to be honest.
Wow,
I think Kelsey's fallen off slightly, but we are all in on Mark Andrews, and we will be for a very long time.
All right, dude, you guys were all in on receivers, less in on running backs, and I want to stick with that a little bit. I hit that waiver wire early, and there were some running backs that were available. Patterson was available. some guy made a ridiculous mistake and dropped Fournette. He was available. The Darrell Williams was available later. These were some of the guys that I approached in free agency, and they made a huge difference for me. Was there anybody on this team, because I talk to players all the time. They say, you put so much time in working waivers. And to what result? That's what I'm always curious to know. Did you have a really big pickup that paid continual dividends, or did you have a pickup that paid dividends just once? And then, keeping with our theme of frugality here, did you guys end the season with a bunch of money still in your fab budget? I want to know. I want to know if you even spend those imaginary fab dollars, because there's just, I'm curious about that. So there's a lot of questions there. Answer them in any order you wish, but man, I wonder if you guys dominated in the one on the waiver wire as well.
Yeah, so actually we ended the season with a dollar left. So in that sense, we weren't conservative. We tried to spend as much as we could. But I think the reason we only had a dollar left is because we kind of had two big ticket items in waiver wire, and they were Kadarius Toney and Adrian Peterson. While we were trying to chase the RB2 spot. So those ones they didn't work out, and we probably spent close to $600, $700, $800 between the two of them, which is kind of, now that it's January, kind of crazy to think about with hindsight. But we did have a couple guys that really stepped up for us. Like we were talking about earlier, we're really, after the draft, we know that we need a RB2 spot, and we ran really hot, just trying to get guys that could fill out the end of our bench, and if an injury happens, they're the next man up. So I know we took like Ramondre Stevenson. We picked him up in week 3 or 4. I think we picked him up for $1. It was on Sunday morning. It wasn't even on the Wednesday waiver wire. And I think the next week Damian Harris got hurt and went out for a week or two, and we were able to start him for a couple weeks. Same with Mark Ingram. We picked him up, I think, week 7. We had 3 or 4 of our running backs on our team on a bye week. We were in bye week hell, and we literally just needed a guy that was going to get 12 touches a game, which while he was on the Texans, he was still the starting running back. So we picked him up a week later I think that might have been like $10-15. Picked him up a week later he got traded to the Saints, and a week after that Alvin Kamara got hurt, and all of a sudden now we have an RB2 for 3 weeks, and we're starting in Mark Ingram. Probably
Balky,
the biggest
that's what
one,
you call making your own luck. That's making your own luck, baby. You didn't get lucky. You made that happen. Good job.
I will say that we also, after the draft, we know we need an RB2, and every year it seems that after week 1, there's always somebody that just pops up. And this year it was Elijah Mitchell, and we ended up. This is probably our most heated back and forth of how much do you bid on him, and we ended up getting up to $730 of a bid for him, and it ended up not even being close, as he went for $951 in our league.
Let's get into this. The championship round, guys, fellas. You make the final 3-week sprint. You're looking at your lineup as you guys were mulling this over in weeks 15, 16, and 17. Really, how many difficult lineup decisions did you have? Because oftentimes we'll bring champions on the show and they'll say, well, I didn't have the deepest of teams, so the lineup sort of set itself. Did you guys really mull over any tough lineup decisions throughout the championship round?
I will say that going into the playoffs, basically the biggest decision we probably ended up making was we finally got off McLaurin and started starting Waddle. But most of our lineup, except for RB2 and, just your typical kicker and defense, was pretty much set. I mean, we had very good health, and we ended up drafting well. And the biggest decision we probably made that almost cost us was in the championship round, we ended up choosing to start Tony Pollard over Ramondre Stevenson. So the whole day on Sunday and even Monday, we were just sitting there like kicking ourselves because we were like, oh my God, this might cost us $500,000. So the biggest decision we made actually probably was the wrong one, but we ended up, thanks to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, being able to overcome it.
So you made these decisions. As Balky says, you think long, you think wrong. Did you make them quickly?
I would say early on we did, because after the regular season, I think we were in like 1,500th place, and then the first week of the playoffs, we only put up 120 points, which dropped us to, I don't know, somewhere in the 2000s. So we kind of thought we were done, and then so we didn't put much thought of it, and then we had an eruption, and then last week we really started to think about it. Still chose wrong, but luckily it didn't actually end up mattering.
So week 17 is a magical week. The last week of fantasy football, I am glued to our leaderboard in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, and the numbers are very similar to what I'm sure was happening over in the FFPC. Everything was so close. Guys were jockeying back and forth and in position, and so many different guys were in our top five, and the number one spot changed multiple times, and as we got ready for Monday Night Football, and that had an impact, especially with Deontay Johnson's play. If he had caught just a couple more passes, we would have had a different result over here. How did you guys spend that week 17 together? Were you cool? Were you chill like you sound tonight? Were you absolutely going nuts? And when you realized that you had won, what particularly did it mean to you? Who were some of the people that you told first?
Well, with week 17 when it started, we weren't even together because, like I was saying, we started week 17th in 61st position, I believe, and we're texting the whole time, and then we're watching Jamar Chase pop off, and we're exchanging a lot of like let's F and go text messages basically every 3 minutes for it. And so it didn't really set in. And then we only had 4 people at one, and it was Burrow, Chase, Waddle, who was kind of a dud, and our boy Mark Andrews. After the 4 p.m., we had a bunch going, and I didn't think we had a really good session, so I kind of stopped checking it. I'm pretty superstitious about staring at it while it's going on. So I kind of thought we were dead, and then at like 7:30, Donny shoots me text. He's like, "Hey, bro, we're in 13th place." So we're like, "Okay, well." Then we started actually looking at it, and we realized that a bunch of the teams ahead of us were dead, and of like the top 100 spots, we were the only team that still had both Najee and Adams left. So we ended up thinking that, wow, we might actually have a chance to ship it. And then after Adams' performance going into Monday night, we thought we probably had a 40 to 50% chance winning. So then Donny ended up coming over for it, and we were watching together at my house with my girlfriend and stuff. I had a paramedic on standby for Donny because he wasn't exactly handling the heat very well. And yeah, I mean, the first thing I did was I called my parents afterwards, and I don't even think I could speak. I was just kind of laughing the entire time because I couldn't believe what had just happened.
Yeah, well, I'll also add on to that and say that that I think that last touchdown by Najee Harris, we were up like 3 or 4 at that point, so we were still sweating it a little bit, but I don't think I watched him cross the end zone. Once he got past that last defender, he started running through his basement screaming. Cool. I'm pretty sure it fell to the ground. Yeah, it was really cool.
The drink started really flowing then.
Yeah.
Okay, and did you stay awake until sunup on Tuesday morning? Were you still awake when the sun came up?
Not quite.
No,
but I would say that probably
not quite.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone to bed until Thursday. That's all.
Well,
yeah.
I think that I can for myself partly blame that on the drinks that were consumed after we ended up winning.
Well, yeah, you've got to mix some bourbon with a sugar base, and then you've got to work in some rum somehow. Hey, next time's next. I'll give you a whole thing, but I digress. Balky, what do we got?
Well, I just want to remind everybody too, the final lineup that Donny and Brady had. it was Joe Burrow at quarterback, Najee Harris, Tony Pollard at the running back positions, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle at wide receiver, Mark Andrews, Matt Prater, and New Orleans defense rounded it up. That was good for a 238.8 in Week 17. And we do want to shift over to a couple of emails here, guys. And actually, it's going to be one email, but two questions here. And it's from some people that you guys know pretty well. It's from Tyler House and the rest of the boys from the Hail to Pit League. So a couple of questions here. Now, I assume that this was in aggregate. All the guys got together and decided they each wanted to ask you a question. So I'm going to throw it to them. The first one is for Brady. Brady, Tyler says he's heard you started watching Olympic trampoline events. How did you get into that sport?
I'm not quite sure what Tyler's referring to, but I will say I am a fan of the Olympics, so I guess I've watched some of the trials. But as far as a trampoline event, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
I am, but we'll talk about that later.
All right. So the other one that Tyler and the Hail to Pit League have us here, Donny, it's for you. He writes, word on the street is you are the fashion guru of your friend group. Tell us a little about the PP shirt.
Not answering that. No comment.
They are dodging questions.
I can answer that for Donny. It is the shirt he wears to Kentucky to try to pick up single ladies.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I still have mine. I've been married for almost 10 years now. I still got my shirt that I have for that. We all had it. Okay, I do want, and I'm gonna let's throw this, Brady. I'm gonna throw this one to you here. This is one more. I lied. I'm gonna add one more email here. It's from Jared in Denver. And I think this is a good question for you guys. So, Brady, I'll let you take it. Donny, actually feel free to chime in on this as well. But he said not sure how much you guys have looked towards next year, but where do you think J.K. Dobbins gets drafted in the Football Guys Players Championship? That's Jared in Denver. Thanks for the email, man. Brady, what do you think about Dobbins next year?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I was insanely high on him. I mean, the only problem with the Baltimore offense is they like to split the rock, but who knows if Edwards is going to be healthy. I mean, they're not going to bring back, I wouldn't think, any of the corpse of Devontae Freeman or Latavius Murray. So I would say if training camp reports are all good on Dobbins, that he's probably a top 15, 20 running back with high upside, I would say. Donny, I'm not sure if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I think I would. I think in one of the big concerns about Dobbins before he got hurt this year was that he's kind of in a run-first offense. The Ravens threw the ball at the least percentage of any team in the league. Well, that kind of changed. I think Lamar proved that, granted, he's been hurt and hasn't been playing as well in the second half, but they've been throwing the ball a lot more this year, and I think they're going to carry some of that into next year. And I knew that during training camp they were looking to get him the ball and throw him the ball out of the backfield. And honestly, I think he would have had a big year this year if he didn't get hurt. So I think he'll probably end up going in the third round next year, but I would definitely be targeting him. He's still young and one of the more talented running backs in the league.
The world-famous FFPC playoff challenge, guys, might come down to delivering a big payday to the owners that employ the right running back for the remainder of this year through the playoffs. Balky and I discussed a lot of these players. Sometimes, it looks like no-brainers. And then you find out, well, I sure didn't put that team together right. And sometimes maybe you know who's going to do well, but it's even more important to know who isn't and who might have a quick exit. So I've got some questions to ask you about this. And since you guys obviously have a crystal ball, Balky read your lineup. You obviously had a crystal ball back in August and September, or some type of wizardry going on to put that lineup together. Although that Adrian Peterson free agent thing, that was pretty funny. But, so let me ask you this. Important as to who's going to be good. I think a lot of guys are going to be great in the playoffs. So who's that going to be? But more importantly, who looks good on paper, but in reality you wouldn't trust? moving forward.
Donny, you
want to take that one first? Oh,
yeah.
I'll go ahead.
See, these are hard questions, Balky, and so they're switching them back and forth. See,
yeah. No,
they're not falling on the ball here, Balky.
I got them. Make sure to write these two down. So I think that I don't know if you guys have paid close attention to the Rams games recently, but I don't think Matthew Stafford has looked very good. And I think they might be in danger of losing in the first round of the playoffs. So with that said, I might fade, and especially in a big tournament like this one, I might be fading Cooper Kupp, and just hoping that either Matthew Stafford doesn't look the part and their defense carries them, or they get bounced in the first round and you gain a whole bunch of leverage off of everyone that took Cooper Kupp. As far as sleepers, and I'm actually going to contradict myself a little bit here, but if you look at the past 2 years, who are the kind of the league winners in formats like these, you're always looking at those running backs that kind of pop up out of nowhere, the second string guys that become in timeshares or first string guys. So if you look at 2019, you have Damian Williams during the Chiefs run, and last year you have Leonard Fournette, who came out of nowhere. I think that it's kind of a long shot, but couldn't Cam Akers do that this year? He's been practicing for the past couple of weeks. We know Sony Michel's looked okay, but he's not Cam Akers. So it's probably not likely, but in the event that does happen and the Rams make a run, it might be because Cam Akers has returned back to form, and you're one of the few teams that have him.
And for mine, I'll say, a big fan of winning these types of pools where, it's the top team that needs to be unique and, score the most points, obviously. My sleeper, I would say, if the 49ers get in, is I think everybody will be taking either Debo or Kittle from the Niners. So I think a good leverage spot would be to fade those two and then drafting Elijah Mitchell, because I think, as we've seen with Shanahan, when he's healthy, Shanahan loves him. He nobody else touches the field. Trey Sermon's irrelevant. Jeff Wilson's irrelevant when he's on the field. So I think that's a very, very good leverage spot to fade Debo and Kittle and end up taking Elijah Mitchell. And a team I'm fading in general, back to our boy Tyler House that sent that email, is the Tennessee Titans. I think are arguably the most fraudulent one seed. Not argue, they are the most fraudulent one seed of all time. I think the most fraudulent team left that's going to be in the postseason. So I'm thinking I'm not going to touch A.J. Brown or Derrick Henry, because I think they get bounced instantly. I know a lot of people think Henry is going to be, King Henry, which I also, full disclosure, I did think he was going to be bad this year, and I was clearly wrong on that. But I think you don't know what he's going to get coming back from injury, and they're going to lose the first game. So I would be fading the Tennessee Titans in general.
Guys, I want to go out to the phone lines here and take a quick call from a listener calling from the 223. 223, go ahead. You're on the HSFF Hour.
Hey, this is Buddy Greg here. Just got two quick questions for Brady David.
Go for it, man.
Hey, Greg.
So the first question is, who won our Dynasty League this year in Justin Boland's league?
Somebody by the name Greg the Leg, I believe, took that home. Not very sure if it's the same Greg as you.
Sorry for putting you on the spot here. Second question. In our Pick'em League, who's been in first place in League 2?
I also think that might be somebody by the title of Greg the Leg, although I hear this guy Lee Greeley's pretty sharp, and he's been right on your tail all year.
All right, that's all I have.
Hey, I like this guy. I like this guy on the phone. Buy him a new shirt and bring him to Kentucky with you. He's all right.
No, Hank.
The funny thing about the guy on the phone is he actually FaceTimed us for the entire game on Monday night, and he was in it with us. So he's cool. That's why we'll let these clearly loaded questions slide. But he was as good of a hype man as you could have ever asked for.
Yeah, I've been somewhat of a good luck charm for Brady when it comes to these kind of things.
Well, see, now, here's the thing, Greg. Dizzle in the chat room said right now, like, is it gonna be your turn for the $500,000 next year and keep this in the league, right? And you could get maybe a 10-pack of Football Guys teams next year and go for the $500,000 yourself. And then Brady and Donny could be calling in next year when you're having your championship interview, and then they can have the loaded questions for you. I think this is setting up nicely, Greg, for you in 2022.
God willing.
I'll have a full year to prepare questions for him.
Greg, thanks for the phone call, man.
Yeah, you know.
Thank you, Greg.
Greg the Leg. I love it. All right, guys, listen, we just kind of teased a little bit. $500,000. Congratulations. It's a ton of cash. Brady, have you already thought about what you plan on doing for your cut of the loot? And then Donnie, what's going to be your approach when you get that cash hitting your bank account?
I'm sorry, I broke up there. What did you say?
Oh, no, Brady. I just want to know what you plan on doing with your cut of the $500,000.
Oh, I mean, to be honest, it hasn't really felt real to this phone call, so I haven't really thought about it much. I mean, as we touched on earlier, I do have a girlfriend. As you can see in the picture, I do have a little puppy. Actually, depressingly, the first thing I actually spent the money on was 6 hours after we went to bed. I had to go get her spayed. But I would say probably, with the house together and the dog together, there's probably only one step that needs a little fun for it. So some of it's probably going to go to that. A very large chunk will go to Uncle Sam. And then I know I want to do something for my parents. I've asked them something that they can let me buy for them because, they've been so helpful and meant the world to me growing up. And, they deserve something for themselves. So I've given them the task of coming up with an idea. We'll see what it ends up being. But I'm not going to take no for an answer on that.
Good for you. Donnie, what about you?
So I'll probably have a little bit more fun answer than Brady as the single guy, but I know. So I haven't really thought about it too much. I'm kind of in the same boat as Brady. It's a life-changing amount of money. It's too much money, to be honest. I know that I'm probably in the same boat. Want to get my parents something nice. I know me and my dad are big golfers. So he's probably at home listening. We might make a bucket list trip to Scotland or something like that once the world opens back up. We'll see about that. Also, I know there's been a little bit of chatter about entering a main event or two next year. Maybe a live draft in Vegas. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, it'd be great to hang out with you guys in person in Vegas if you come out to Planet Hollywood to draft those main event teams. That'd be great. Also, Dizzle, Dave Gerzak, one of the FFPC co-founders, hanging out in the chat room tonight. The only question he wants to know for you guys, Donnie and Brady, you did it with one team this year. You think you might go with maybe a 3-pack in 2022 and maybe take a couple more teams with this thing?
That's a good deal.
If I had to guess, I would say we will probably split one team together, maybe a main event, just because we have to try to run it back a defender title. But I would say, at least for me, I'll probably have several of my own, and I'm not sure about Donnie, but definitely there will be more than one team in the pot next year.
Yeah, so probably so this year we had our one Football Guys team, and I had a couple $35 satellite leagues. That I got second place in this year, so I might have to abandon those $35 credits that showed up today in favor of another Football Guys team or two.
Tremendous accomplishment for you guys. Congratulations on the $500,000. We all follow you on Twitter. Donnie is at TheAndrew66. Brady is at BDavid16. The 2021 Football Guys Players Championship $500,000 grand prize winners, Donnie Andrews, Brady David. Thank you so much for carving out a little time on your Friday night to talk fantasy football. Good luck in the playoff challenge and good luck next year, guys. This is so much fun.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, guys.
All right, you guys be good. We will talk to you again real soon, hopefully in Vegas. We'll see. Farrell, I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of time to get to the playoff challenge strategy. We're going to dedicate more of next week's show, and we have a great guest for that, actually, that I'm going to talk about in a second. So the last thing I want to leave the listeners with fantasy football-wise tonight is something I was thinking about when they were talking about their first overall pick, Devontae Adams, in the draft. You know, oftentimes my approach has been to get the hero running back, the anchor running back in the first round, and then build up my wide receivers, right? And I think there might be something to be said for grabbing maybe the hero receiver and then peppering in running backs there too. I mean, you're not ignoring the receiver position, but especially in the FFPC, why not go with that receiver, that target hog in the first round? And then maybe go running back or tight end or maybe a couple of running backs and then, just kind of work your way and suss out the receivers. There might be something. We always talk about hero RB. Maybe hero WR is a thing, and maybe I'm just not well-versed in it enough yet. Maybe this is already a thing all over fantasy Twitter. I don't know. But I think that's something to think about because these guys did it for $500,000.
I think you're insuring your situation against and going against the tide, especially when everyone is putting those running back stickers on the board. And to get a receiver like this, like Adams in this year and what he had going on with Rodgers, is just fantastic. There was the potential that Stephon Diggs could have picked up his game and had a similar year to Adams, but it did not happen with what went on at Buffalo. So, yeah, this can be a great situation. He still has to stay healthy, and you could argue that a receiver has a better chance of staying healthy than a running back that's taking that pounding. You're also in a situation where you are invested in the health of that quarterback. Without a healthy Rodgers, we don't have this kind of season for Adams. So, it's a lot of things that make up a championship. These guys said, we had good health. Our lineup sort of set itself. They didn't have to do things in free agency because they had just enough at the number 2 running back position to make it work. In Pollard was consistent. He never had a big breakout game. There's just so many things that went right for them. They talked about how Andrews went right for him. And, I think they're probably pushing it to think that Andrews would be the number 1 tight end. They tipped us off to the fact that things happened in Baltimore to allow Andrews to be the player that he was. And, Andrews stayed healthy and did not have issues related to his continuous medical issue with, I believe it's diabetes. So everything went right for them, but they worked at it, and they made their own luck with Mark Ingram. They went and got Mark Ingram before the trade deadline. Things happened for them positively. Good for them. You can tell they're good guys. They got good friends. They got good family. I was a little worried there when he was talking about the girlfriend and the dog, but it all worked out in the end. So, everything's cool with these guys. They're going to have a big year. And tell the Dizzle, I'm going to talk them into the the Football Guys 3-pack because everybody needs 2 or 3 3-packs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Never get 2, never get 5, never get 8. You always got to go in increments of 3. Farrell, so good to do this interview with you tonight to talk to these $500,000 champions and pick their brains. KFFSC.com is where you want to go for 2022. Get loaded up on those teams this year. Going to be another fun season. Drafting is just right around the corner. I certainly appreciate you coming on. A belated Happy New Year to you. And next Friday, man, we'll delve deep into the FFPC Playoff Challenge strategy talk.
We'll see you then, and we need to get that man in here to tell us how to win, Balky, because I need some help.
You got it. Be good, Farrell. Talk to you again next Friday. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Follow him on Twitter at jfarrellelliott. KFFSC on Twitter at KFFSC, and, of course, KFFSC.com. This completes tonight's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Donny, Andrews, Brady, David, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for hanging out and listening. I want to remind you, if you're looking for more fantasy goodness, listen to the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Scott Colby at rotoviz.com/podcast. He is the runner-up in the Super Bracket Championship this year. Also won a main event league title. and has had a pretty successful high-stakes fantasy football career over the last couple of years as well. Always fun to talk to Scott. Want to wish a happy birthday to former FFPC Dynasty champion Rob Levin. Of course, Rob has been a guest on this show before. He is celebrating birthday today. We celebrate with you, Rob. And next Friday is our big FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge preview. And who better to help us out by being our guest is the 2020-2021 World Famous Challenge $500,000 winner, Jeff Oliva. He will be our guest. Tell us about how he put together the winning lineup last year, how he blew all the money and is ready to go back-to-back this year. That is next week. Remember to register for those playoff challenges at myffpc.com. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
So I did tease a few things at the top of the show that we simply ran out of time because the interview was so much fun with Donny and Brady and then, of course, Greg the Leg popping in as well. So next week, it's going to be full coverage on what you need to do for playoff challenge teams. If you're just submitting one team, if you're submitting multiple teams, we'll talk about the Packers, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, or do you want to throw caution to win and go with Tyreek Hill, who's really dropped off over the last couple of weeks. And then as far as the Bills go, I think a popular choice will be Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, tight end premium scoring. How crazy do you want to get with Dawson Knox? In my opinion, not that crazy, but we'll get Farrell's thoughts. We'll get Jeff's thoughts. That's all coming up next week, and we'll know the whole field by then too. So we'll have plenty to talk about. World famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, $500,000 to enter. The grand prize, just $200 to enter, and you can do that at myffpc.com. Go ahead and make sure that you're loading up those teams right now, and you can set those lineups later when the teams are known. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Week 18, everybody.